what's going on, guys? It's Amir, and in this video we're going to talk about how to know if you are a good candidate for a hair transplant. Now, I know that when someone loses hair, when someone finally experiences hair loss or unfortunately experiences hair loss, the first instinct is, oh my god, what do I do? Where do I go? And the first thing that obviously pops up to your mind is, I guess I'm gonna have to get a hair transplant. I guess that's the only solution, because that's the thing, and popularized media and everything that people have gone through who've made major hair transformations have done. They've just gotten hair transplants. But how do you know if you're the right candidate, and what should you be looking out for if you are also considering a hair transplant yourself? So in this video we're going to cover those few things, and everything that I'm going to talk about, all the points that we're going to talk about, they all just layer up on each other. So pay close attention, because it's not just one individual thing, it's kind of all of these things. First things first, we have to get out the way is obviously the timing. As I said, when most people experience hair loss for the first time, the first thing that they think of is, oh my god, I need a hair transplant, or I need to do something, or I'm gonna lose all my hair. Before we get into all of that, it is also important for you to assess yourself on when did your hair loss start. Is it last month, last week, last year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like, where are you in your journey? This can differ for each individual from where they are and also how old they are as well. If you are in your late teens and you've only been balding for maybe 2 years or so, maybe it's probably a good idea for you to hold off and try other treatments before you jump into a hair transplant. And that's the answer I absolutely hated the most when I was losing my hair at 19. Like, hey, wait a second. I was like, dude, no, I just want my hair, man. Like, and I was willing to do whatever it took for me to get my hair back. Now, the reason why it's crucial for you to wait a little bit, especially if you're in the earlier stages of hair loss, is because hair loss is progressive. Just because you're receding your hairline and you're losing something on your crown, or you may be just thinning out all around, does not mean that's the worst it's gonna get. It can, and it most likely will get worse, and there are ways to kind of reverse that and treat it or cure it or prevent it, and do some of these things without a hair transplant, without all that time, effort, and money that you would need to put into a hair transplant, especially if you're early on in the journey. And ideally, you want to get your hair transplant when your hair loss has mostly stabilized, or you've come up with a good enough regimen to at least keep most of the hair that you have, and you still have maybe a balding area, you still may have a receding hairline that's not coming back from maybe Rogaine or finasteride, whatever your protocols are that you are following, and it's still bothering you, and you've had that problem for at least 3 to 5 years, then I'd say it's probably a good idea for you to go ahead and start considering your hair transplant options. If you're a year or 6 months just freshly into the hair loss game, look into solutions like minoxidil or finasteride if that's something that you're comfortable taking, derma rolling, rosemary oil, castor oil, biotin, saw palmetto, and even ketoconazole shampoo. All of those things are great protocols for you to at least slow down your hair loss, or kind of make the most of it with what you have right now. And then once your hair loss has mostly stabilized, if you're not able to grow back the hair that you would ideally like, then a hair transplant is probably a good option for you. Now, just like there's timing, there's also stages of hair loss. Now, to know what stage you are on, it is most popularly categorized on a Norwood scale. It's categorized on a Norwood 1 through 6. And depending on where you are on the scale would probably be a good indicator for you to know if you should get a hair transplant or not. For me, a Norwood scale 4 was absolutely terrible, but my hair loss had mostly stabilized from the treatments that I was doing at a Norwood 4. Luckily, I didn't progress to a Norwood 5, and Norwood 6, we're done, we're out of the game. So before it got to any of that, I'd say for myself and the treatments that I was doing, Norwood 4 was my protocol to go ahead and take that step and start looking into hair transplant options. We're able to at least reverse this to a Norwood 3 or 2.5 at least. This is also a very important thing to consider because hair loss will progress, and if you are a Norwood 3, eventually you'll probably get to a Norwood 4, and with time goes on, just because of the nature of how we genetically lose hair, it's gonna, at least you'll stay at a Norwood 5, if not a 6. So before we get there, or if you're getting there, then I would say definitely if hair is a priority for you, then it's probably a good idea to look into a hair transplant. Speaking of actually initiating the hair transplant, another important thing to keep in mind is the quality and the density of your donor area. Just because let's say you are a Norwood 4 and your friends are Norwood 4, both of your results, if you guys went even to the same clinic, the same doctor, same everything, can drastically vary because of your donor area. Basically, your donor area is the back of your scalp to the side and the mid area. This is the area that is DHT resistant. DHT is the testosterone responsible for hair loss. With a hair transplant procedure, what these guys will do is they will go ahead and extract these grafts from the back, from this which is known as your donor area, and they'll go ahead and transplant them up on wherever you need the hair, whether that might be on your crown or your hairline or kind of all over, or just to fill in the density. Wherever you need the hair, they're gonna take them from the back and they're gonna kind of shift them up over here. If you have a very thin donor area and you're also thinning from the front all around, then maybe from them transplanting the grafts up over here, you're just overall not gonna have maybe a fuller hair, but not the most thick hair, because genetically your hair is just naturally fine. So whatever hair you have back over here, if it's coarse, if it's fine, if it's thin, whatever it is, it's basically the hair that you're gonna get up on top, and that's what you're gonna be genetically limited to be. Your doctor will look at before your hair transplant is they will most likely use this machine to see how many hairs are in a single graft of your donor area. So some that are just simply single grafts, some will have double grafts, some will have triple grafts. Ideally, if you have a lot of double and triple grafts, it means that when they do transplant the hairs up on top, you're gonna have a good, fuller, thicker looking scalp. Whereas, if you only have mostly single stranded hairs or single grafts, then you can probably expect more of a finer look. Still fill in, but you might need more grafts in a certain area than an individual who has double or triple grafts. Another really important thing about the donor area is, let's say you are a Norwood 6, you're completely gone, you're over here. Some people may not even have enough hairs left in their donor area to support, how far gone they are. Let's say you are a Norwood 6 and you're all the way at the end of the scale for your hair loss. And unfortunately, they can only extract so many without over harvesting your donor area. At that point, it's just diminishing returns, unless you're at that certain age or certain time of your hair loss where it's just too far gone, it's too late, and you're just kind of better off just staying how you are or completely just shaving your head. That's really up to the facility that you go ahead and choose to get your hair transplant from. I did get my own hair transplant done in Turkey, and these guys were very transparent and honest with me on exactly what I can expect. Like, for example, for me, I had a lot of double and triple grafts that they were able to see through that machine that they were using on my head. But my friend that I went with, who also got a transplant with me, he had a lot of single grafts, which leads us to our next point, which is expectations. Depending on how long you've been balding for, where you currently are on the Norwood scale of your hair loss, how your donor area looks, that all dictates after you get your hair transplant how it's gonna look, right? If you have a lot of double and triple grafts, you have almost maybe a fuller, thicker look of hair. Whereas if you have finer or thinner hair, when they do end up transplanting those grafts, you might even need more grafts to support the same kind of structure and look of your overall hair growth. Or when you run your hands through your head, it might not feel as as thick and luscious as you kind of expect it to feel. And depending on what stage you are in your hair loss, you can expect a different outcome. And that's why for most people, it's kind of unrealistic to expect a full head of hair unless you're in the very early stages. Maybe you're a Norwood 3 or a Norwood 2, then yeah, you can expect a full head of hair. But for most people considering your hair transplants, they're Norwood 4 and plus. So you can't expect yourself to look like how you were in your teen years, because you can only work with what you have. And most doctors, especially if you go to a reputable clinic, whether it's Turkey or US, they will try to do it without over harvesting or taking too many grafts to the point where it looks unnatural in your donor area. So these guys, they want to be conservative with the amount of grafts that they want to do in a single session. Either way, depending on how your donor area looks, this is something that your doctor or facility should definitely communicate with you on what you can expect. Because if you are expecting a full luscious locks of hair, and after your hair transplant it's been 8 to 12 months and you look nowhere near what you expected, you'd kind of be let down and you'd be kind of pissed about why did I get this hair transplant. I went with my friend to get a hair transplant, and for him, he had a lot of single grafts on his donor area, and I had a lot of double and triple grafts. And now that it's been exactly 8 months for both of us, his hair came out to be a lot finer. His scalp definitely took a lot longer than mine to fill in, but throughout the process, throughout the journey, and even where he is now, he's not upset that, you know, his hair looks different from mine, because we have two completely different set of hairs, two completely different set of grafts, and that's something that the doctor communicated clearly and honestly, and set those expectations clear for us, so that hairs did grow out. We're happy with what we have, and we just kind of accept that that's what we are genetically capable of with our donor area that we had. That is why it's really important, especially if you're going to get your hair transplant done in Turkey, to go to a clinic where these guys are going to be honest, and they will tell you exactly what you can expect. So when your hair does grow out after your transplant, you already know what you're expecting. For those of you who are wondering where I went in Turkey, I went to this facility called Vera Clinic. If you're interested in getting your transplant from there, I'll go ahead and leave their information in the description below, so you can go ahead and contact them for your own online consultation. And the last but absolutely the most critical thing to know if you're a good hair transplant candidate is your willingness to continue treatment after your hair transplant. See, I've talked about it in my other videos that it is not simply enough for you to go ahead and get a hair transplant just because you're balding and see it as a one-stop shop cure and you're good to go. Because hair loss is progressive. You might be a Norwood 4 and you get a hair transplant, you might be coming back to maybe a Norwood 3 or a 2, but that doesn't mean you're always going to stay there. In the next maybe 2, 3, maximum even 5 years, your native hairs that are not transplanted, they're still susceptible to further hair loss and more susceptible to DHT, which inevitably, most likely, will end up going away. So if you're not on any sort of protocols like DHT inhibitors like finasteride or minoxidil or ketoconazole shampoo or biotin and sulfamide, or at least regularly caring and oiling your hair from time to time, if you are not doing those protocols or continue treating your hair, then you'll most likely end up losing it again even after your hair transplants in a few years. And you don't want to end up consistently going back, because each time that you do, you end up hitting a wall of diminishing returns, because there's only so many grafts that are available for them to even possibly transplant. So these are the few things that you absolutely must know and understand before you go ahead and get a hair transplant. Hopefully after watching this video, you're able to get a good insight on exactly where you are, what you need to do, and what you can expect out of your own hair transplant. And also, after you get your hair transplants, what you need to do to keep the hair that you do end up getting from your hair transplant. So if you guys did enjoy this video or found it helpful, make sure to let me know by giving it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next video. Peace.